Thank you, Marie. Today is an important moment in the history of the Labour Party. It's taken many, many months of hard work and humility to get here. It's meant rebuilding trust, not just with the Jewish community, but with all those who were rightly appalled by the culture of the party under the previous leadership. When I became leader, I said I would turn Labour around and give it back to the British people. And the most important and urgent part of that was in tearing out anti-Semitism by its roots. Anti-Semitism isn't evil.
Yeah, unless, of course, you're a Jewish person who doesn't agree with the annexation of the West Bank and or agrees with Haaretz that there are at the very least neo-Nazi elements in the new Israeli government, in which case you get harangued by the whips and or removed from the party, which the insinuation that Jewish members should take some specific line with regards to the state of Israel is indeed anti-Semitism. So you've not got rid of that. In fact, it's gone worse under your leadership. More Jewish people have been suspended from the Labour Party under Keir than under Jeremy Corbyn.
Evil. And no political party that cultivates it deserves to hold power. I said from the start that we would be judged not on our own terms, but by the return of those who felt they could no longer support us. The first step on that journey was to accept the findings of the Equality and Human Rights Commission. But it was deeper than that, because we also had to make clear that there was no space for anyone who didn't do the same. That is as true today as it was then. Let me be very clear. Those who seek to blame others or downplay what happened in our party are themselves part of the problem, and we will have zero patience or tolerance of that.
And that's the problem, right? Is that when you get this all or nothing, if you don't accept exactly what the findings say, then you are part of the problem. It leaves you with this position where any ability of wanting to think critically about the findings of the report suddenly then gets you immediately labelled as some kind of anti-Semite for, at least think you even questioning any of the findings, right? It's in some ways not too dissimilar to the way people get treated in like social justice spaces, where no amount of apologizing, and so if you apologize, then people will say, well, it's proof that you're guilty. And if you question other people's judgment of you, they will then say, well, then you clearly just can't take criticism, and so you're left in a position where you just can't win. And I find that very frustrating.
Having accepted the Commission's report, the onus was then on us to begin to right the wrongs of the past. I'm proud to lead a party and a team that have worked tirelessly to do so, and it is as a result of that work that I'm speaking here today. But while it is an important...
Yeah, exactly. It's frustrating that they are trying to say somehow that they've taken their party back. They've taken their party back to 1996. And that's where they've taken the party back to. And I've said, far too many times that I'm unable to count really at this point on this channel, in that the Blairites were the real entryists. The Labour Party has always been a allyship of convenience between Social Democrats and Democratic Socialists. It's not been a centrist neoliberal party until the Blair administration. And because they once, to be fair, they won a lot of seats in 1997. That gave them the ability to be able to put huge numbers of people who shared their ideology at the top of the party and use that to shape the political nature of the Labour Party for a huge number of years. It's very difficult once they took hold of the party apparatus to change the discourse background again and change the positions background again. It's really frustrating that the idea that somehow the policies that were being represented by the administration during 2017 to 2019 are suddenly being touted as not as unrepresentative of the Labour Party or some kind of fringe group, or quite frankly, the way this has been editorialised as him rebuffing the hard left, as if wanting to return to the post-war consensus, as in wanting some kind of social democratic, non-monetarist, non-neoliberal managing of the economy, is engaging in heterodox economic analysis, is somehow the only the realm of extremists. Like, I've seen some clips from this speech go viral on Twitter. A lot of the speeches will talk about, a lot of the people talk about they're no longer a party of dogma. I mean, well, yes, they are now. They're just a party of neoliberal dogma rather than social democratic dogma. And quite frankly, at least the social democratic dogma has some kind of utility, unlike neoliberal dogma, which is just centrists for centrists' sake. Which, again, is the reason why Labour are going to fail when they get into power, because they're fundamentally not going to change anything. And the endemic problems of our economy and our society can only get worse. And that will bury Labour for, however many years after that as well.
Moment. It is not one for celebration. It is one for reflection on how a party that has always prided itself on anti-racism, on its commitment to equality, its belief in a better, fairer Britain, could have fallen so far as to betray its own principles as well as the principles of the country. This is also a moment to apologise once again to all those who were hurt, to all those who were let down, to all those driven out of our party who no longer felt it was their home, who suffered the most appalling abuse. Today, on behalf of the entire Labour Party, I say sorry. What you've been through can never be undone. Apologies alone cannot make it right. But just as I promised to take this issue head on, today I make you a number of further promises. Firstly, that under my leadership there will be zero tolerance of anti-Semitism, of racism, of discrimination of any kind.
Brilliant. Love that. That sounds like a really great idea. What about transphobic discrimination, Keir? What about Rosie Duffield and Tonya Antionazzi and all of the other people in the party who continually tout transphobic nonsense rhetoric? And you yourself, considering we are just in the position where a trans teenager has died, and you have been on TV in the incredibly recent past saying that you think that she should be buried and her death certificate should call her a man in death. That's the position that Keir Starmer has said that he holds with regards to trans people. Why is it that the only discrimination that matters is the one that the media have continually harped on about, rather than the stuff that has... I guess, to be fair, the media have also harped on quite a lot about transphobia, just from the complete other direction. How he's entirely beholden to the media, really. If the media hates trans people, he's happy to see them discriminated against. If the media thinks that Labour is some kind of cesspool of anti-Semitism, he will completely cave to complete biased reporting on this issue. I just cannot properly stress how infuriating this all is.
And secondly, that every day I will work ceaselessly to bring this party back to the British people.
And it's not just trans people either. It's not just something it's not just trans people that have been victims of racism within the Labour Party within the recent past. Councillors have quit over anti-black racism in the party incredibly recently, and not only that, but they literally have the Ford report that told us and showed us that there was a quote-unquote hierarchy of racism within the party, where racism against black people, and Muslims especially, was not taken as seriously as anti-Semitism, because it wasn't ever about anti-racist principles. It was about looking good for the cameras. And to turn a blind eye to the abuse suffered by people like Diane Abbott and Afsana Begum, because they were from a different political faction of the party, it's just disgusting. It really is. And to him get up on a podium and then try and, laud himself as some kind of proud anti-racist is despicable.
No doubt, the job of restoring Labour is not complete, not even close. I don't see today's announcement as the end of the road. I see it as a signpost that we're heading in the right direction. I feel humbled when I think of all those who've tirelessly dedicated themselves to getting Labour.
Yeah, Afsana Begum was the MP who was attacked by her partner, and Keir Starmer said nothing publicly about it, and also allowed the NEC to try and go through a deselection process while she was in the middle of trying to litigate against her abusive partner.
Labour back on track. All those inside and outside the party who've made it their mission to restore, renew and rebuild Labour on behalf of the country. It's thanks to them that we can say firmly, proudly, confidently, the Labour Party has changed. Not because it was convenient to do so, not by fiddling around the edges, not just until the next person to lead the party comes along, but permanently, fundamentally, irrevocably. We have changed from a...
Like, the fact that he's literally, like, it's so obvious that it's being done to satiate the media's desire to smear the Labour Party, and for him to come out and say that it's not to try and do some virtue signal, when it clearly that's exactly what it is. It just drives me round the bend. It really, really does. Like, I get that some amount of politics is always going to be about your public image rather than trying to be steadfast in whatever specific political ideology that you adhere to, and I accept that. But for him to just say, well, no, actually, I even though it's very obviously about me wanting to be engaged in factionalism and me wanting to look good for the press and me wanting to satiate the press's desire to, to extricate left-wing politics from this country, and then he blatantly says, but I'm not. I explicitly says, well, actually, no, I'm doing the opposite of that. Actually, sorry, it drives me mad. It really does.
Party that looked inward.
It wasn't Nadia Whittome that was reselected. It was Zara Sultana. I think of. Like, Nadia Whittome didn't face. Oh no, maybe they both went through the reselection process. I forget. But Zara Sultana was the one that was in doubt, quote unquote, but wasn't really in doubt because all the branches voted in favour of her.
To a party that meets the public gaze. From a party of dogma to a party of patriotism.
Yeah, it'll meet the public gaze, but won't meet the public trans. Ayo.
From a party of protest to a party of public service. Change is never easy. And I understand that some people won't like the changes that we've made. But I say this with all candour. The Labour Party is unrecognisable from 2019, and it will never go back. It will never again be a party captured by narrow interest. It will never again lose sight of its...
Yeah, definitely not captured by narrow interest. The person who was, as has been revealed, is trying to specifically take donations from big businesses so that they can override the policies that have been voted upon by party democracy, and shape the future power of the party in exchange for political donations. And again, this is literally the first time that we have had this kind of iron rod over the Labour Party with regards to what people will judge as being quote unquote acceptable political positions for them to take. This never happened under Blair. This never happened under Kinnock, right? They never engaged in this kind of deliberate ideological orthodoxy in this kind of fashion previously. This is new. This is a new thing to be doing. There was even under Jeremy Corbyn, was there a purge? No. Was there allowed to be some kind of level ideological heterodoxy? Yes, there absolutely was. And there was no if the things that Keir Starmer has done on the Labour Party were being done under Jeremy Corbyn, the press would be all over it. At the moment, though, the press completely fucking silent. Completely silent.
Its purpose or its morals. And it will never again
I'm genuinely worried about this guy as PM as well, Fancy Wiki. 100%. He's terrifyingly authoritarian in a way that people like Blair and people who preceded Blair never really were at all.
Can be brought to its knees by racism or bigotry. If you don't like that, if you don't like the changes that we've made.
And again, the racism or bigotry. What about bigotry against fucking trans people, Keir? What about the bigotry against trans people? Why are trans people the fucking exception when it comes to the kind of bigotry that you'll stand against? Why? Why are we the exception?
I say the door is open and you can leave. But to all those who could see we've changed for the better and are excited about doing even more, to all those who dream of...
And again, he doesn't want my vote. He doesn't want it. He's saying point blank, if you don't like the changes that we've made, then you can leave. And yeah, brilliant. I have left. I said on this last segment I did about Keir Starmer, because God knows he gives me so much fucking material. Yeah, fine. If you don't want me to vote for you, Keir, I won't fucking vote for you. Simple. There you go. Done.
...of a Britain that is fairer, greener, more dynamic. To all those who want to make this great country greater still.
And I love that he can't even let go of the stupid, nonsense buzzwords. Oh, well, yeah, they want to make up the country to a more dynamic. Oh, I didn't realise we were going to be making a dynamic world, Keir. Love it. Brilliant. Amazing.
I say the door is open. Come in. Make us your home again.
And it's clear what he's doing, right? It's clear who he's signalling to. Specifically signalling to middle-class people with this thing, right? Is that the people who were alienated from the Labour Party previously were people who were clearly alienated by class politics in general. And he's, again, trying to move specifically towards a demographic of people who were disenfranchised with the Conservative Party because of how they've attacked things like pension funds and mortgages and things like that. And, it's fine to criticise the Conservatives for doing that because things like mortgages and pension funds are important, right? I have a pension. I know it's pretty early for that stuff and there may be societal collapse that gets in the way, but pensions and mortgages are incredibly important, but they cannot be the sole focus of your entire electoral strategy. Because at the moment, we have an entire political system where no political party other than the SNP bothers speaking for young people. And we're the people who are continue being screwed over by every government and have done for the last 45 years. There's a gigantic wealth gap and achievement gap between the different age demographics in this country. And unless a party is serious about fixing that, and quite frankly, at the moment, where they are setting their electoral sights on not doing so because they think it's more important to appeal to a cohort of voters rather than to create a better country, is what are we supposed to do?
Working together, I believe we can do great things for our country. I believe we can be a force for good. And that starts today. No one knows better than me that there is much still to do. That is why my third promise to you today is that I will not rest for a moment until the job of changing the Labour Party for the better and then the job of changing our country for the better are complete. Thank you very much.
What changes has he even... He's not even said, okay, we'll have some green power. Right, okay, brilliant. Is that it? We'll have a climate change agenda, which, to be fair, we're also getting from the Conservatives. I love that the big future plan for the Labour Party, apparently, is they are going to be doing more... they've got a green energy revolution plan. When the Conservatives have also got a fucking commitment to net zero. It's hardly like a gigantic difference between the parties on this issue, and even right-wing newspapers have noticed how similar the parties are. Obviously, they wish they were more right-wing rather than me, who'd wish they were more left-wing. But even when you've got people like the Telegraph describing an ideological hegemony between the two parties, what the fuck are you supposed to do? You're worried they'll replace Sturgeon with a transphobe? I don't think so. I think it's going to be Angus Robertson, and Angus Robertson's usually pretty good in this kind of stuff. And okay, I get why you're mocking the flags and stuff like that, and I get it. It is absolutely 100% cringe. Yeah, you're 100% correct. It's very, very cringe. But at least I can understand the reason for doing it. I'm not gonna all it is just like an empty gesture that's used to win over voters. That's fine. It doesn't actually affect any kind of the utility of any of amount of the like party policy or anything like that. But when the entirety of the policy platform that was set out in 2017 and pledged to adhere to by Keir Starmer in 2020 gets thrown into the bin in the sake of ideological purity and adhering to the dogma in a way that he says that he's not going to, that's where I start losing my support. Obviously, the flags are cringe, but whatever. I'm above caring about the vacuity of the amount of flags that he's using and the outward virtue signaling that he's doing. Obviously, it's cringe, and I'll mock him for it, but I'm not gonna. That's not gonna affect whether or not I want to vote for the Labour Party or not. But fundamentally, the problem is the policy platform. And right-holders will do this all the time. The aggro-centrists will say, "Oh, just because Jeremy Corbyn's not there anymore." Like, I think he should be in the party, but I genuinely, I'm beyond caring about which specific member of the Labour Party is at the top of the party. I just want the ideological tenets of the 2017 manifesto and Keir Starmer's 10 pledges adhered to, and it's all gone in the bin. It's all gone in the bin completely.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're going to take some questions now from the media, and I think, Alex from BBC, we're starting with you.
Thank you very much, Sir Keir. Alex Forsyth, BBC News. You've talked today about how the Labour Party on your watch has changed. Can you say categorically whether or not the former leader, Jeremy Corbyn, will...
I mean, literally, James, that's exactly how I feel, especially as a trans person. Like, there's no pro-trans people leading any party in Westminster anymore. The only party that was actually explicitly pro-trans in I guess there is no party leader for Sinn. Like, the only party that could theoretically have a pro-trans leader would have been Sinn Féin, but of course they don't take their seats in Westminster, so we've got nobody left after Sturgeon goes.
Will stand for Labour at the next election?
Let me be very clear about that. Jeremy Corbyn will not stand for Labour at the next general election as a Labour Party candidate. What I said about the party changing, I meant, and we are not going back, and that is why Jeremy Corbyn will not stand as a Labour candidate at the next general election. Thank you, Alex.
I mean, what I do hope is that he'll stand as an independent, and I think he probably will. I probably will stand as an independent. He put out a statement on Twitter today, which I thought was a reasonably good statement from him. So that's kind of refreshing, I guess. But I don't really hold high hopes that there'll be a change of heart from Starmer with regards to who he will or won't have on his in the parliamentary party come 2024. But if he does run as an independent, I hope he wins. It'd be very, very funny if Corbyn runs an independent and then wins. Because at the very least, if he's in government, if he's in Westminster as an independent MP, some future Labour leader could bring him back into the fold.
I think, Marie, we're coming to you, Sky News.
Hi, Keir Starmer, Maria Aurora from Sky News. You served under Jeremy Corbyn in his shadow cabinet, and today we've had the campaign against anti-Semitism come out and say that they still don't think they've had enough investigative, essentially disciplinary investigations into anti-Semitism against more than 12 MPs. Don't you think this undermines your commitment to Jewish people and Jewish...
Although the Scottish Greens don't have any seats in Westminster, obviously, they've only got seats in Holyrood.
...voters that you're taking this seriously?
Well, thank you for that question. I think and I hope that...
Well, I understand that there is obviously a lot. There's transphobia who's kind of at fever pitch in Scotland at the moment, so I can understand that you feel that way. But when I look at the kind of things that get said around trans people in Scotland and the the rhetoric of the actual parties and the polling that's involved, they are still far more progressive than they are over here. So maybe my long-term plan is to sell up and move to Scotland.
My actions over the last 2 to 3 years have made it
And there are still plenty of pro-trans MSPs that could become a future first minister.
absolutely clear that my commitment is to tear anti-Semitism out of this party by the roots. That was the first thing I said as leader of the Labour Party.
Yeah, and he's going to do it in his own special way, which is expelling Jewish people for not adhering to the ideological groupthink that he thinks that they should be adhering to as Jewish people, which is definitely in no way anti-Semitic at all.
That's why we've taken the action that we've done.
And the Tories do have lots of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia in their party, and the stats will show you they have more anti-Semitism than the Labour Party. In fact, older people are far more likely to be anti-Semitic than younger people. It's incredible. The narrative has managed to continue this long, and I'm fucking dead this game.
That's why I am pleased today that the Commission has said that they're confident in the plan that we have put forward. But look, as I said a moment ago, this is not the end of the road. This is just a signpost, and we must be as robust as we go forward as we've been until now. And whatever cases and allegations are put to us, we will take the same robust approach. Today is an important day, but it's certainly not the end of the road in relation to that. Thank you.
And I just think in general, progressive change will always be stymied by liberals just not understanding politics. And I said this on Twitter as well, I feel like so much of it, of what centrists disliked about Corbyn was entirely based upon vibes, right? It was all vibes-based politics. They didn't like him because they decried him as being a populist in the same way that they decried Boris Johnson as being a populist, right? Obviously, Boris Johnson isn't a populist. He's just somebody who likes being popular, which is two separate things. And I've talked about this a lot on this channel too, is that this country is very demarcated along class lines specifically. Obviously, there is a strong middle class in this country, but even that strong middle class are kept outside of the inner ring that belongs in all of the other institutions of this country. For example, places like the private school and Oxbridge systems, and all of those inner rings that are genuinely the establishment in this country. And the fact that liberals are so kind of unknowing about this because they're middle class people and they've essentially spent their entire life being taught by the political establishment to throw their ire towards working people rather than towards the socio-political systems that they claim allegiance to. This is why we continually get stuff like this from Keir Starmer. This is why we continually get stuff like this from liberals, is because they fundamentally will refuse to critique the systems that have led us to this point in the first place. They are blinkered and incredibly short-sighted in the ways in which they view politics and the political system and how these things take shape.
Harry, ITV.
Good morning. Harry Horton from ITV News. You served under Jeremy Corbyn in his shadow cabinet. When you were serving under Jeremy Corbyn, could you not see anti-Semitism spreading throughout the party? And if you could, why didn't you do more to speak out about it?
Well, Harry, thank you for that question. As you know, it's a matter of record that on anti-Semitism I challenged the previous leader both in the shadow cabinet and publicly on that. And it's absolutely clear that the Labour Party lost its way, and that's why I knew that my first duty as leader of the Labour Party was to change the Labour Party and to tear anti-Semitism out. That's why, on my acceptance speech, I made an apology on behalf of the Labour Party and made that my commitment. And what I asked...
And you're absolutely right, Black Mufu. Corbyn is rent-free in all these people's heads. And I was actually commenting about this on on TikTok earlier today, in that it seems to be the people who are most obsessed with Jeremy Corbyn are the centrist types. This is just my guess, so don't quote me on this. And if I get to be proved wrong, then so be it. But I feel most people who are on the left of the party and of ideology in this country, generally it was never about Jeremy Corbyn. It was always about the policies. It was always about the future of the country. It was always about policy. And the efficacy of the political platform that was being set out in 2017 and 2019. And you always get this response in that, oh, well, we're not a left-wing country, we're a centrist country, you can't win with the left, when 2017 it shows us that's 100% not true. Like, I admit they were failures, foreign policy being one of them, and if anything, 2019 was a very, very hard lesson on how to lose an election on foreign policy. But that doesn't mean that we have to throw the entire baby out with the bathwater when we look at the future political prescriptions and the platforms for when Labour is going to be in government. I really don't.
Of all those that were affected was the opportunity to be given the space to do what I needed to do and to be judged by my actions. And I'm grateful to all of those who gave me that space.
Well, God, I'm judging you by your actions. Fixing up candidate selections, expelling people on spurious grounds, all that kind of shit. Those are the actions of a tyrant and an authoritarian. If you disagree with that, well, I'm sorry, but you're wrong.
And are now judging me on my actions. Thank you, Harry. Lee.
Lee Harpin from Jewish News.
Yeah.
Are you today...
Oh, fucking libel Lee Harpin. Love him. The guy who keeps getting the quote-unquote leaks from Labour sources. Definitely not Newt Gingrich.
promising you will take action against any MP, any councillor, any member in the party who denies anti-Semitism, who uses the phrase purge of socialism to excuse anti-Semitism? Are you pledging action against these people?
Lee, thank you very much for that question. I hope I've made it clear this morning and previously that all those that deny there was a problem of anti-Semitism, all those that pretend it was exaggerated, are part of the problem themselves and will be dealt with under the rules of the Labour Party, because it's very important that we are robust in relation to those views that this was all somehow exaggerated and that the extent has been disproportionately blown out. I don't accept that, and I don't accept that has a place in our Labour Party. Thank you, Lee.
Interesting, though, they actually avoided the central premise of that question, which is interesting, in that the actual question was that whether or not people who were criticising Starmer for engaging in a quote-unquote purge of socialism from the party. He didn't actually answer that bit, which, you know, is... Maybe it's clear that he is doing it, so he doesn't want to admit that he's doing it. But interesting that he specifically avoided saying whether he was or wasn't on that one. But, you know, as I've said many times, it obviously was blown out of proportion. So. Sorry, I need to replay the video.
Ben from the Jewish Chronicle, please.
Good morning, Sir Keir. Hi. So it seems this is a really big day for the Labour Party. It seems the upper echelons are in the right place in the HRC.
Sir Keith, I think you'll find. Sir Keith Stonga Casey, use his real name.
Is happy with the progress. But as alluded to by Marie van der Zyl of the Board of Deputies, there are still issues at the local level with councillors and party officials. JC revealed just yesterday a party official local party official, had been posting, you know, extremely questionable content for many, many years, up until most recently. So, you know, are you confident that issues are being addressed at the local level, and how can you reassure Jewish people who want to get involved in local party politics that they will be safe to do so? Thank you.
Well, Ben, thank you for that question. The fight against anti-Semitism is never over. And that's why it's so important that I make it clear today that, of course, it's an important day for the Labour Party that the Commissioners decided that our plan has been operated and they're content with it. But it doesn't mean the fight against anti-Semitism is over anywhere in any political party, including my political party, and we will continue with the same robust approach, because the changes that we've put in place are fundamental, they're substantial. The Labour Party has changed. And the Commission would not have signed off today if they didn't think it was fundamental and substantial. And so wherever there is anti-Semitism, we will chase it down and we will deal with it in the same robust way as we've done over the last 2 to 3 years. Thank you. And I think we've just about got time for Theo from LBC.
Theo Ashwood, LBC.
Theo.
Thanks for taking my questions, Sir Keir. At the beginning of your statement, you said that under Jeremy Corbyn, Labour cultivated anti-Semitism. That would suggest that there may have been a political intention to allow a culture of anti-Semitism to foster for perhaps political ends. Do you think that's the case? And I think everybody in this room could testify to the fact that there is still anti-Semitism is still prevalent in society. And how much responsibility do you think Jeremy Corbyn, his leadership of the Labour Party, bears responsibility for that? Thank you.
Well, Theo, thank you for that question. I think that the work against anti-Semitism is never over.
Well, as you're right, Zachary, I mentioned this previously, in that a lot of the people who were getting out of the party, like Naomi Wimborne in Drizzy, for example, was elected to the head of the NEC, removed from her post and expelled from the party for being a Jewish woman who didn't agree with the state of Israel, who didn't agree with not agree with the existence of the state of Israel, but the actions of the government of the state of Israel, right? She was expelled specifically on that point. So it's not just people who engage in anti-Semitism who should obviously be expelled from the party, but it is not just people who disagree with the actions of the government of Israel, but also Jewish people who do not conform to the ideological orthodoxy that people expect from the Jewish community. This inbuilt understanding, and Margaret Hodge was very clear about this. She was speaking on an interview in Radio 4, where she was saying that Jewish people who didn't agree with the actions of the State of Israel should leave the party as well. And so this belief that there should be some level of ideological orthodoxy amongst Jewish people around the State of Israel, as if they should be some kind of monolithic group. That is how is there anything other than anti-Semitism? It's incredibly obvious anti-Semitism.
It was absolutely clear to me when I took over as leader of the Labour Party that we had to change the Labour Party and we had to start with anti-Semitism. And that's why, as...
I mean, I read the EHRC report on stream, Coversign, and it... Whilst there was... I'm not saying that the reality of anti-Semitism within the party was overblown. In the report specifically, it made clear case as to where things went wrong, where the party apparatus went wrong, and also where it went right in the fact that things got better when Ian McNicol was replaced by Jenny Formby and replaced by Keir Starmer, no less. So by Jeremy Corbyn was the person who put Jenny Formby in charge, who then led to the changes that were praised by the report in the EHRC report. But the original claim that was made by Jeremy Corbyn specifically was that people in the media specifically used this to imply that the problem was was far more endemic to the party than it actually was, which is true. The media did blow it out of proportion. I don't know how anyone can claim otherwise at all, because it was obviously overblown. It was so obviously overblown. And the fact that so few cases have been brought to bear to be able to make that proof and make that case. When the HRC report, had 3 specific cases in it? Like, these are bad and they should all be dealt with, but that's not in any way some kind of smoking gun that proves that there is institutional anti-Semitism within the Labour Party, or that there is something specific to the Labour Party, or that the Labour Party is worse than any other party that's currently in Westminster, especially when you poll members, the Conservative Party polls higher on anti-Semitism. Like, it was literally an official report in 2017 into the party member bases on how they viewed Jewish people, and Conservative Party members scored higher on anti-Semitic statements than the Labour Party did. Like, the report itself wasn't overblown, but the response in the media about what the report did or didn't say was absolutely overblown.
As leader of the Labour Party, in my acceptance speech, I apologise for what had gone before, and that's why I said what I said this morning, and I stand by those words. But look, very, very important that we're clear that this is a signpost that we are making progress, a signpost that the actions we've taken over the last 2-3 years are the right actions. And
we also know that lies were being told, because we've all seen the Labour files. We all know what happened about that woman who was said in the Panorama documentary. Sam Matthews said that she said, "Are you from Israel?" when she actually asked, "What branch are you from?"
It would be a complete mistake, in my view, to think that now somehow the job is done. It is never done.
Yeah, like, obviously, yeah, you're absolutely right, Ling Ling. Obviously, Keir's never been sincere about this. You know, and the presser and the opposition party are right to say you stood by this man for all of those years. You, in your campaign to become leader of the party, you said multiple things, including things such as we shouldn't let the last 4 years, the policies of the last 4 years, be consigned to history. That we should accept those. That we should continue to champion those ideas. Right? He explicitly said that in the leadership campaign. And he pays tribute to Jeremy Corbyn and the leadership that he showed. Were those all lies? Are these lies? Who knows? He's a political chameleon. He's a windsock. He'll blow whichever the way is blowing. Whichever way the wind is blowing, he'll just continually follow. And he's a man without principles, and without, quite frankly, a fucking hope.
We must fight anti-Semitism wherever we find it, every day as a political party, every day as individuals. Thank you, Theo. And Alitha from The Guardian.
Thank you, Keir. Alita Addy from The Guardian. If you are set on ensuring that the Labour Party will be one not of protest but of equality, will you this morning prescribe the Momentum group that has long supported Jeremy Corbyn, or at least put them on notice this morning?
Well, look, I have many powers and duties and responsibilities in the Labour Party, but...
What's interesting, actually, is the chair of Momentum actually didn't really like Jeremy Corbyn very much and didn't like him as leader, and was actually far preferred... Is that just Roy Target Artifact Enchantment on that? Yeah. And actually far preferred other leaders and didn't like what happened when Jeremy Corbyn was leader. So the idea that Momentum is somehow indelibly tainted with Jeremy Corbyn just doesn't actually fit. It's not actually... Yeah, that's a weird narrative to be taken. And 2 cards, yeah, probably.
That one is not for me, I'm afraid. But look, whatever group or individual in the Labour Party, I think the message from this morning couldn't be clearer. This is an important day. It's a day of reflection. The change that we've brought about is substantial and it is permanent. The Labour Party has changed. And if there's anyone in the Labour Party that doesn't like that change, then my message to them is very clear this morning. The door is open and you can leave. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
And it's interesting, it could theoretically, right? I am willing to give the benefit of the doubt that there could theoretically be some benefit of the doubt given, in that when he's saying the door's open then you can leave, he's specifically actually referring to anything specific regarding anti-Semitism. And it's not specific to the left-wing views of the party or the political platform that Jeremy Corbyn championed, right? But it's hard to not read the subtext. It really isn't hard to read the subtext. If we're being completely honest, Islamophobia within the Tory party has contributed to more recent and worse violence in recent years. The complete silence on the UK's culpability in fueling global Islamophobia has ever been dealt with because all Western countries are Islamophobic, and it's convenient to stay that way. Yeah, it's funny how the media are all incredibly Islamophobic, right? And so they're very reticent to call out the Tory party on their kind of innate Islamophobia. And yet, you don't see the same level of vitriol from the press against the Jewish community, and obviously, thank fuck that we don't. And then it's funny that after that, the media campaign was very, very. It was extremely concerned with anti-Semitism in Labour, but not a whiff, not a single discussion about Islamophobia in the Conservative Party. Don't you find that a bit weird? Don't you find that a bit strange? Isn't that a bit odd to you that we will continually have discussions around anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, but the Islamophobia in the Conservative Party just never gets touched on by a media that is also incredibly Islamophobic? It's a bit weird. It's so strange. So strange. And obviously the EHRC has had problems with lots of different kinds of bigotry, transphobia and racism being among both of those bigotries that they've engaged in. That's fair enough, Coversign. Yeah, no, I understand that. I mean, and these things, and the problem as well is that parties are so secretive that I am willing to admit that plenty of this is just kind of speculation. Plenty of this is going to be incredibly speculative because we don't know. People are never going to know exactly what goes on behind closed doors.